It all happened a few months ago, on a night I'll never forget. I've been driving for Lyft for a few years, mostly taking night shifts because the streets are quieter, the pay is better, and the passengers are generally nicer. But the risks are higher, and sometimes I encounter passengers who are so bizarre they haunt me. I still consider myself a cautious driver. I've encountered many strange passengers, but none have ever made me feel as uneasy as the man I'm about to describe. That night, I drove my old but reliable 2005 Volvo. It was late, the streets were quiet. Only the streetlights flickered and the rumble of the engine echoed through the city. Around 2 a.m., I received a request from a nearby convenience store. Something made me hesitate. For some reason, as soon as I accepted the ride, I felt a chill run down my spine. It felt like someone was whispering in my ear, telling me to cancel this trip. But I ignored it and drove to the pickup location. When I got there, everything was pitch black. The store was closed. No one in sight, not a single car parked in front. And then I saw him. There he was, standing right outside the store, wearing a tattered hoodie. There was a big hole in the sleeve, as if it hadn't been washed in years. But what made me shiver the most wasn't the clothes. It was the way he moved. He kept turning his head to look behind him, as if someone was watching him. Or watching someone. At that moment, I clearly felt the danger. My finger was on the cancel button, but for some reason, I still unlocked the car door. And he climbed into the back seat without saying a word. Most passengers would play with their phones or look out the window. But he didn't. He just sat there silently, staring at me through the rearview mirror. Not blinking, not turning away. Just that cold gaze, piercing me as if trying to read my heart. I tried to concentrate on driving, but I couldn't ignore the creepy feeling. I turned on the radio to break the eerie silence. But as soon as the music started, he jerked up and growled. "Turn it out." His voice was hoarse, low, like that of a long-time drug addict. I was startled, immediately turned off the music, and gripped the steering wheel tighter. A few minutes later, he suddenly spoke, as if he had read my mind. "Have you ever picked up the wrong person?" I froze for a few seconds, then tried to calm down. "I hope not." I tried to smile wryly to lighten the situation, but he didn't smile back. He leaned back in his chair, muttering something I couldn't make out. Then he started telling a story. He said he used to be an Uber driver, but quit after a gang of young men robbed him. His voice was broken and confused, and it was clear he was drunk, or something was wrong. But what scared me the most was that he kept smiling as he told the story. It's weird to think that we put so much trust in the person sitting right behind us, isn't it? That sentence sent a chill down my spine. We were only 5 minutes from our destination when he suddenly shouted, "You missed the turn." I looked at the GPS. I wasn't going the wrong way, but I still slammed on the brakes because I was really scared. Just then, a police car drove up. The headlights swept across my car, and I saw him crawl down to the floor, lying close to the seat, as if he was hiding from something. As the police car passed, he lay still for a few seconds before saying softly, "You're lucky." Then he opened the door and disappeared into the night. I didn't dare take any more customers. I returned home, my heart still pounding. But the story wasn't over. A few days later, I read the news. That night, a convenience store just 2 blocks from where I picked him up had been robbed. The criminal? None other than the man I had dropped him off that day. He escaped, but the police believe he is still lurking around the area. If the police car hadn't driven by, he might have done something to me. From that night on, I installed a dash cam. I never wanted to be in that situation again. I worked the night shift in the admissions area of a large hospital's emergency department. My job isn't too complicated, but many nights I see horrors that normal people would never think of. It started out like a normal shift. I sat at the front desk, talking to Amy, a coworker of mine. We were both used to the hustle and bustle of a hospital at night. But that night was strangely quiet. Around 2 a.m., Amy went to bed, leaving me alone to man the reception desk. A few minutes later, the automatic door opened and a man walked in. He was wearing a black jacket, dark jeans, and his hair was messy as if he hadn't combed it for days. He walked slowly, his eyes lifeless, staring at me strangely. He said only one sentence. "I'm looking for Hannah Smith." I don't remember the name he said, but it was a woman's. I looked up the patient list and couldn't find anyone by that name. "Sorry, there's no Hannah Smith here. You can check other hospitals in the area." He didn't say anything, just nodded stiffly, then turned and walked out the door. I turned to the guard standing a few meters away. We exchanged suspicious glances. We both felt something was off about him. 30 minutes later, Amy returned, and we continued our shift without anything out of the ordinary happening. I thought it was over, but I was wrong. I got off work at 4 a.m. The hospital parking lot was huge, with the staff section all the way at the back. It was quiet, with only a few cars parked here and there. As I walked to my car, I felt something was wrong. It felt like someone was following me. But when I turned around, there was no one. I opened the car door, threw my bag on the passenger seat, and drove out of the parking lot. I lived about a 20-minute drive from the hospital, and the road home was deserted. But even though no one was following me, I still felt unsafe. When I got home and turned off the car, I heard footsteps running quickly to my door. I stood frozen, my heart pounding like it was going to jump out of my chest. "Please open the door. I need help. Please." It was his voice. He had followed me home. I pulled out my phone and called 911, not daring to say anything. He continued to pound on the door, his pleading voice growing more tense and desperate. "Please, I need help. Open the door." I said nothing, just stood there, breathing lightly. Then, the banging stopped. I gasped and looked through the peephole. He was gone. The police came. They checked around my house and discovered the most horrifying thing. My car's back door is open. He was in my car all the way home. If I hadn't locked the door as soon as I got home, I probably wouldn't have lived to tell this story.